Episode 56 EC May 9, 2023. The U.S. industrial subsidy policy wastes precious money on industrial biomass, wood, burning subsidies based on the lie that wood burning is carbon neutral issue. Residents against wood smoke emission particulates, see rawsepresidents.wordpress.com and scroll down for PDFs of articles with URLs to search on. On rawsepresidents.wordpress.com are links to 30-minute YouTube videos and podcasts on Spotify, podcasts.google.com, Amazon Music Prime, free for Prime subscribers, Castbox, and Pocket Cast. Pocket Cast is only free on the phone app. The phone app works on Apple phones. View. Biomass, wood, burning is subsidized in the United States because it is designated as part of the energy sector deemed renewable. Wood burning receives subsidies alongside the clean industries of wind, solar, and geothermal. Wood burning is called green and subsidized based on the lie of the carbon neutrality of wood burning. A near majority of the U.S. Congress attempted to remove the carbon neutral label from biomass, wood, burning as recently as December 2022, but Maine's Republican senator blocked this attempt. The Biden administration has signaled that renewable, subsidized industries should also be clean industries, but not explicitly. Scientists across the United States explicitly stated that biomass, wood, burning was highly polluting and was not carbon neutral, most notably in a 2019 letter with many scientists signatories to the U.S. Congress. But subsidies for renewable biomass, wood, burning continue from federal sources and from some state sources. Massachusetts and New York State have stopped some subsidies for biomass, wood, burning, but there remain huge loopholes to cutting back these subsidies in both states. Carbon neutral is the belief, in the face of scientific objection, that the carbon that is emitted from the stacks of biomass plants and residential wood stoves, indoor and outdoor, doesn't count as pollution. Levels of particulate matter and CO2 are literally not counted if they decline towards succeeding in the climate goals of most countries to get to zero carbon emissions around the world. The most harmful particulate matter is PM2.5, particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early death. CO2 and particulate matter from biomass, wood, burning emissions exceed emissions from coal burning. Wood burning is 90% PM2.5 and its PM2.5 levels exceed coal burning's PM2.5 emissions and are 450 times the emission level of the cleanest fossil fuel natural gas. Wood burning for residential heat of course emits PM2.5 while if electric heat pumps are used residentially using energy from a new grid encompassing rural as well as urban and suburban areas and powered by the clean energy sources of wind, solar and geothermal, is clean electricity which can warm homes even in climates that in winter reach 40 below zero Fahrenheit. Why is wood burning still designated by politicians, but not by scientists, as carbon neutral? Because of the fallacious construct, the expedient lie, that because trees can be planted to replace trees cut down for burning, wood burning can be ignored. Scientists state that replacing mature trees can take decades or centuries. And in the meantime, the CO2 and PM2.5 emissions at the biomass and wood stove stacks do not magically disappear when a new tree is planted, or even when a new tree matures. The pollution still exists, at levels higher than coal burning emissions, and 450 times higher than natural gas burning emissions. Carbon capture is a new way that industries are jockeying for more subsidies, in addition to wood burning subsidies. But carbon capture is a failure and is expensive and time-consuming. Industries are promising they are working on carbon capture, and just need more and more subsidies to be successful. The solution of course is to just stop burning solid fuels like wood and coal, now. No afterthought or cleanup of solid fuel emissions is needed when solid fuels are not burned in the first place. But that would eliminate the subsidies that solid fuel industries are rubbing their hands together anticipating will arrive from the federal government or state governments. You may or may not have noticed that the cost of solar and wind energy is undergoing a steep decline. Once these industries are fully developed, they probably will not need government subsidies. But biomass, wood burning plants have always needed subsidies to continue, and they will require subsidies to be economically feasible into the future. The logistics of finding and moving wood to places where it is burned alone is economically prohibitive without help from subsidies. Wood burning is polluting, contributes to climate change, is not carbon neutral because that theory is based on lies, and wood burning cannot pay for itself. Wood that is scarce becomes more expensive to residential consumers, and unlike with wind, solar, and most geothermal, there is a limit to how much wood can be consumed before it runs out. What is the argument that advertisers use on gullible consumers today? Wood burning is traditional. But notice that these types of advertisements have only been used in the last few decades, when advertisers can hide behind the fallacy of carbon neutral to justify their hucksterism. It is not green or renewable to burn wood. It is ludicrous to suggest that wood burning is clean, or good for the environment, or good for human health. But the subsidies for biomass, wood burning continue to exist, sometimes only as loopholes in laws that generally shut down biomass burning for wood from ancient forests. So, forest advocates make their case against some ancient forest wood burning. But residents against wood smoke emission particulates are more honest and direct and speak about immediate problems of human health being affected when a human being is a near neighbor of a residential wood burner. And the CO2 and PM2.5 emitted by wood burning hastens climate change more than industrial or home coal burning, and 450 times more than natural gas burning. Politicians may adapt to accept what they think they cannot change. Citizens have to bring the things politicians can change to the politicians, whether on the local, state, or federal level. It is probably best to start at the top, since the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, EPA's, rules, or at least the EPA's ideas include the idea that there are safe levels of particulate pollution above which human health is threatened existentially. Enforcement to ensure these PM2.5 safe levels are regulated in reality has been a relative failure up to now. Citizens have to bring the things EPA administrators can enforce to their attention, also. Then things can change, and air can get cleaner, and near neighbors of polluting residential wood burners can see those residential wood stoves shut down. Only then can near neighbors of residential wood burners have quiet enjoyment of their own property, take a deep, cleansing breath, and live in peace. Rozep View. This article in the New York Times states that the Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act sought to fight climate change with industrial policy, offering businesses and consumers a variety of subsidies to adopt green technologies, with the quintessential example being electric vehicles ultimately powered by renewable energy sources. Rozep argues that residential wood burning and biomass burning, which receives U.S. government subsidies, is not mentioned in this article, and it should be. Continuing to include wood burning in a supposedly green industrial policy and giving subsidies to wood burning is a travesty. This article states that the news so far is that businesses appear to be rushing to take advantage of those subsidies, so the budget cost of the act is likely to be substantially higher. This article is entitled How to Think About Green Industrial Policy. The author, an economist, argues that even if the cost of subsidies goes up, and up, it is worth it because the author writes, suppose that the Inflation Reduction Act ends up costing $1 trillion more than expected, which would mean that it spurred several $1 trillion of green investment, because it would be bringing in a lot of private sector money, too. This would mean higher future interest costs. The Congressional Budget Office currently projects that by 2033 the government will be spending 3.6% of gross domestic product on interest. At current interest rates, an extra $1 trillion in debt would mean around $35 billion a year in additional interest payments, raising the total from 3.6% to 3.7%. That sounds to me like a pretty low price for a significantly better chance of avoiding climate catastrophe. The indications that the Biden administration's climate policy is likely to cost more than expected and may provoke a subsidy war with Europe is actually good news. What is this subsidy war? The U.S. will meet its climate goals by handing out big subsidies to U.S. industries, and on paper make great progress on its climate goals. Then the United Kingdom, Europe, or the European Union will in turn hand out more subsidies to their own country's industries, and also begin to meet their paper climate goals. 'Cause for celebration, right? But what if they continue giving some subsidies to environmental polluters like the biomass, wood, burning industry, as they are doing now? They are using sleight of hand, although very obvious sleight of hand, to reach their paper climate goals. They measure emissions of fossil fuel industrial plants, but not biomass plants, although the biomass plants emit more CO2 and PM2.5 than, for instance, coal plants. They throw money away with huge subsidies for biomass, wood, burning plants, which results in more pollution, not less, leading us closer to catastrophic climate change in the future, and continuing the particulate pollution causing many deaths already today. ROSEP view, indiscriminate subsidies to U.S. industry is not the answer. Stopping subsidies to biomass, wood, burning industries today is a partial answer to solving the climate crisis and will free up money to help wind, solar, and geothermal industries in the U.S. start up. The U.S. would spend less on subsidies to a wood-burning industry that continues to bleed money, and spend wisely for wind and solar, geothermal, and iron-air battery industries that will pay for themselves early on in the game. Japan is the only country in the world among nations with climate goals disclosing the emission counts from its own biomass plants, but Japan does not yet count biomass plant emissions as a debit in totaling the emissions it must cut to achieve Japan's climate goals. But disclosing emissions at Japanese biomass stacks is a start, and Japan's data, which Japan began disclosing in April 2023, is of interest to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. We can track if biomass emissions are declining or increasing, since Japan is at least disclosing the count. Japan wins that competition for the most transparent, and potentially most compliant with climate goals nation and potentially, in reality, the most successful nation in meeting real, not illusory climate goals, that in reality, if biomass burning is ultimately ended, make the planet cleaner and slow climate change. https://www.newyorktimes.com/2023/05/09/opinion/climate-inflation-reduction-act-biden.html. New York Times. How to think about green industrial policy. May 9, 2023. Excerpts edited by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. The Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act sought to fight climate change with industrial policy, offering businesses and consumers a variety of subsidies to adopt green technologies, with the quintessential example being electric vehicles ultimately powered by renewable energy sources. Early indications are that the Inflation Reduction Act will be an enormous success story. As told in Lester Thurows' 1992 bestseller, Head to Head, America was characterized as falling behind Japan and possibly Europe. Many analysts attributed Japan's economic growth to its industrial policy, that is, government efforts to promote the industries of the future. Japan went from seemingly unstoppable juggernaut to cautionary tale. Although Japan's economy has actually performed better than most people realize, most of its slow growth can be attributed to demographics. The U.S. is reshaping the economy to limit climate change. The main way of doing this is via subsidies and industrial policy, rather than through Econ 101 recommended policies like carbon taxes. This is political. There are enough votes in Congress to do this. Legislation that would lead to a surge in manufacturing is already happening. The Buy American provisions, which will create a clear link between green investment and U.S. jobs, will make the transition more costly and create friction with our trading partners. The reason we're able to make major progress on climate using carrots rather than sticks, subsidies rather than taxes or quotas, is that green technology has been advancing at an incredible rate, consistently outpacing official projections. The main payoff to America's new industrial policy will come, not from job creation or even improved technology, but from limiting the damage from climate change. And this is why a subsidy war with Europe, if it happens, will actually be a good thing. We want other countries to take action on climate, even if it involves some de facto protectionism. The creation of a relatively open world trading system over the past 3 generations, with most tariffs relatively low, was an enormous diplomatic and economic achievement, and I appreciate why some economists I respect are worried. But my view is that in the face of a terrifying environmental crisis, we have to do whatever it takes to limit the damage. We don't want to find ourselves saying, well, we cooked the planet, but at least we preserved the rules of the World Trade Organization. The same general logic applies to the budgetary costs. Indications that the Biden administration's climate policy is likely to cost more than expected, and may provoke a subsidy war with Europe, are actually good news. It will help the planet.